Good Christian Sex, Why Chastity Isn't the Only Option, and Other Things the Bible Says About Sex by Bromleigh McCleneghan, came out in 2016. And frankly, it's a book that seems to have offered a lot of relief for people. Her main goal, really, is to open up a different kind of conversation about sex within Christian faith. Something more practical, more redemptive.
Yeah, moving away from maybe the usual messages, shame, those kinds of rigid gender roles, unrealistic standards.
Exactly. Things that, let's be honest, have left a lot of people feeling kind of lost or like they don't measure up.
Yeah.
So it's not just about pushing back against norms, it's finding a healthier way.
And it got some really positive feedback. Reverend Mihi Kimcourt called it a faithful celebration of intimacy and pleasure.
And Catherine Willis Pershey saw it as this liberating invitation for Christians to actually embrace sexuality as a gift. Apparently, the spark for writing it was pretty simple. A friend asked her for advice, about sleeping with her boyfriend.
And it just highlighted this gap, right? This missing piece in how theology connects actual human relationships, that sort of budding love, with the love of God.
Yeah. So this book is her attempt to build that bridge. Very thoughtful, really researched.
So our mission today, let's explore how Christian faith might actually embrace and celebrate sexuality in a way that's healthy, honest, acknowledges the complexity. We'll look at some biblical stuff, theological insights she brings up.
And it's worth noting she's very upfront about her own background. She calls herself straight, white, raised by educated feminist Christians, very intentionally not shamed.
That's important context.
Yeah, but she really believes these themes she's exploring. They hit home for a lot of people, regardless of gender or orientation. Because, like she says, most of us want to love and be loved. Simple as that.
And she didn't just rely on theory. She did a survey back in 2014 on Facebook. Got over 330 anonymous responses, people sharing stories about love, sex, God, church.
Wow.
Yeah, so it grounds the whole thing in real lived experiences, makes it less abstract, more human.
That real experience part feels key, and she dives right in, doesn't she? Tackles something that makes a lot of us squirm a bit. Solo pleasure.
Chapter 1, my favorite feel.
Yeah, inviting us to rethink it. She talks about how uncomfortable Christians, and just society in general, can be talking about self-stimulation, especially for women.
Definitely. It's often so highly gendered, as she puts it. This idea that women aren't really sexual beings, but men are just constantly driven by desire.
She even shares feeling embarrassed discussing it as an adult. That feeling. It's probably pretty familiar to a lot of listeners, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that discomfort, it didn't just appear out of nowhere. It's got roots. These ideas about biblical manhood or biblical womanhood, they're actually relatively newish historical developments, really formed over the last century and a half or so.
Huh. Newer than you'd think.
Yeah. And historically, you even see weird stuff like the term hysteria, from the Greek word for uterus, reflecting some, frankly, problematic views about women's bodies.
Right.
Plus, you've got the huge influence of figures like Plato and Augustine. Their thinking often set up this kind of body-soul dualism, like the body is somehow profane and the spirit is pure.
Augustine's famous prayer.
Give me chastity, but not just yet.
Yeah, exactly. He initially connected even sexual pleasure within marriage to turning away from God.
But isn't there a core Christian idea that pushes back against that?
Absolutely. Incarnational theology, the belief that God created us body and soul in the divine image. Our bodies are inherently good. We're made both powerful and vulnerable.
Light and Psalm 8.
Exactly. When I look at your heavens, what are human beings that you are mindful of them, yet you have made them a little lower than God and crowned them with glory and honor? It sees our bodies as gifts, not something to be ashamed of or escaped from.
Okay, so back to self-stimulation. McCleneghan says it's basically universal. Pretty much. Even seen in infants, she suggests it's just a normal human thing, like eating and sleeping, which really challenges the idea that it's automatically sinful.
And there's an ethicist she mentions.
Christine Gooddorf. Yeah, Gooddorf talks about sexual pleasure as a pre-moral good, meaning it has inherent value, it's a basic human need, before we start layering specific moral rules onto it.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me. The story of Onan in Genesis, usually cited against masturbation.
The classic interpretation, yeah. But McCleneghan offers a completely different reading.
What's her take?
She argues Onan's sin wasn't the act of spilling seed itself. It was about injustice, about shirking his duty to his sister-in-law, Tamar. He had sex with her, but deliberately refused to fulfill his obligation under Levirate law to provide an heir for his deceased brother.
So he was denying her economic security.
Exactly. He was fundamentally mistreating her, doing injury to her personhood and her standing. The sin was the ethical betrayal, the injustice, not the non-procreative sex act in isolation.
Wow. That completely reframes it.
It's a huge shift. And her survey responses seem to reflect a different view, too. People calling self-stimulation my favorite feel or a gift from God.
So she's not throwing out chastity entirely.
Not at all, but she redefines it. For her, chastity isn't just abstinence, it's about restraint. It means refraining from sex that isn't mutually pleasurable and affirming, sex that doesn't respect the autonomy and sacred worth of both yourself and your partner.
Restraint for the sake of mutuality and respect.
Precisely. And that understanding really flows into how she looks at desire itself.
Okay, so desire. Genesis often paints Eve's desire negatively.
Right, as leading to trouble. But McCleneghan contrasts that with the Song of Songs. She reads it as this incredible celebration of crazy, hot, mutual sexual desire between lovers.
Not something sinful, but
Maybe even a means of grace, which is a powerful idea. It connects to this theological concept that God actually desires us. We're made to grow into that wholehearted love of God.
means of grace, like communion or prayer.
Traditionally, yes. But McCleneghan suggests, why couldn't intimate acts, kissing, sex, when they're rooted in that mutual respect and affirmation, also be channels of grace? Ways we experience God's love, the power of being truly seen, truly desired.
That connects to what Jesus said about abundant life.
Yeah, exactly. Like in Luke 9.24, losing your life to save it, or John 10.10, I came that they may have life, even pleasure, and have it abundantly. It's not about suppression, but about fullness.
Okay, so if pleasure and desire can be good, gifts even, how do we handle them ethically? This seems like the next crucial step.
Right. Chapter 3, Playing Fair, the ethics of good sex.
She tells a story from college, right? Kissing someone she didn't really like.
Yeah, didn't like him like that, but liked kissing him. And later she realized that was sinning. Not the kiss itself, but treating him like an object, not respecting his personhood.
Which really begs the question, what is sexual sin then? Is it only about marriage? Or is it more about consent, respect, that objectification piece?
And that's where the traditional party lines get complicated because, as McCleneghan points out, definitions of sin, even definitions of marriage, they haven't stayed the same throughout history.
Things change.
And ethicist Margaret Farley notes, the Bible doesn't really give us a neat, systematic code. It's more like occasional responses to particular questions in particular situations.
So how do Christians figure it out?
McCleneghan, coming from a mainline Protestant view which sees the Bible as inspired but also written by humans in specific contexts, suggests we need multiple sources. The Bible, yes, but also reason, knowledge, tradition, and importantly, our lived experience.
Experience counts.
Definitely. And this leads her to Martin Buber's philosophy, the I and thou idea.
I it versus I thou.
Exactly. Are we treating others as objects, as it's to be used? Or are we encountering them as fellow subjects, as thous, valuable in themselves? Buber says God is the eternal thou. Like in Exodus, I am who I am. God can't be pinned down like an object. Or John's gospel, Jesus makes God known through relationship.
So our sexual partners should also be thous.
That's the argument. So her college experience, sinful not because of a kiss outside of marriage, but because she treated him as an it, failed to respect his full personhood. She says, mistreating a friend was a greater threat to her virtue than the physical act.
That really moves the goalposts from just following rules to focusing on the quality of the relationship, the respect involved.
It does, and it explains why morality focused solely on virginity can be unhelpful or even harmful. She mentions a survey respondent who didn't know how to set boundaries because the traditional rules just didn't apply to her experience.
So what are the positive guidelines then for good sex?
She leans heavily on Margaret Farley's work here, distilling 4 key criteria for what Farley calls just sex, applicable to any sexual encounter.
Okay, what are they?
1, justice. Basically, don't treat your partner as an object.
Right, the I thou thing.
2, respect for autonomy. Free, enthusiastic consent. Absolutely essential.
Couldn't agree more.
3, respect for relationality. Equal partners. A commitment to fairness within the relationship.
Playing fair.
And 4, respect for persons as sexual beings in society. Does the way you interact reflect the kind of freedom and affirmation you'd want for everyone?
That's a really comprehensive framework. It goes way beyond just wait until marriage.
Exactly. It critiques that abstinence-only approach because, as someone else observed, just telling people to abstain doesn't guarantee they will, nor does it teach them about consent. And consent is vital, McCleneghan stresses, even within marriage.
Okay, so ethics is about personhood and justice. What about singleness? The church often seems a bit awkward about it.
Yeah, goofy is the word McCleneghan uses sometimes. There's this huge emphasis on heterosexual marriage, yet Jesus himself was probably single and celibate.
Right, the central figure.
So McCleneghan pushes back on the idea of a matchmaker God who has a specific plan with a capital P for everyone's love life.
God is picking out spouses.
She uses this great analogy from the Lego movie. God isn't the controlling, fascist Lego God dictating every connection. God is more like the inspiration, the creative energy moving the master builders, us, thriving on diversity, freedom, not forcing specific outcomes.
That touches on deeper theological questions too, like suffering.
Yeah, the problem of evil, the riddle of inequality. If God is loving, why isn't everything perfect? Her take is that a loving God isn't micromanaging every detail, isn't in control of every contingency, doesn't play favorites or act like a jerk by handing out blessings unevenly.
So for single people, it means letting go of.
Letting go of things that ignore the real grief of maybe not having the relationship you dreamed of, or things that fuel the shame some people feel about being single.
And Jesus himself can be a model here.
Absolutely. Dale Martin, a scholar she cites, even talks about Jesus as potentially a queer role model for singles. Someone who defied social norms, had deep, intimate friendships, but didn't fit the marriage mold, and still lived an abundant life. Remember Luke 9.24 and John 10.10 again?
And she makes a distinction between celibacy and chastity again.
Yes, really important. Celibacy is specifically refraining from sexual relationships. Chastity is that broader virtue of restraint, of respect, of ethical engagement. She argues you can have faithful, chaste, unmarried sexual relationships if they meet those criteria. Mutually pleasurable, affirming, respecting autonomy, and sacred worth.
Okay, this flows naturally into vulnerability, doesn't it?
It really does. Chapter 5, Naked. A theology of vulnerability starts with that common nightmare being naked in public.
Ugh, yes. It
Right.
taps into that universal human experience. She points to Genesis 2.25, and the man and his wife were both naked and were not ashamed. That initial innocence before shame entered the picture.
So vulnerability is key for good intimacy.
Yeah, she uses Karen Levax's idea of appropriate vulnerability. It's necessary for just sex. It requires self-knowledge, mutual trust, and importantly, marriage isn't an automatic guarantee of this.
Right, just being married doesn't mean there's trust or vulnerability. She mentions an anecdote about a couple where past trauma and lack of trust really blocked intimacy, even though they were married. Marriage can be a container, but it's not a sufficient norm by itself.
And she critiques how modesty is sometimes used.
Definitely. Especially how it's often imposed on women as a form of social control, a way to silence them or blame them.
I remember she mentioned that scene from The Fault in Our Stars.
Oh, yeah, a powerful example, where Augustus shows Hazel his amputated leg before they get intimate. It's this moment of profound mutual vulnerability, trust, and real communication before sex, laying yourself bare emotionally and physically.
Trusting the other person to hold that space.
And she closes that section reflecting on Mary Oliver's poem. I did think, let's go about this slowly, about how sometimes intimacy isn't planned. It's this leap of faith, this authentic connection that just happens.
From vulnerability, it feels like a natural step to talk about our pasts, exes, history. It gets messy.
Doesn't it just? Chapter 7, History. A theology of exes and the things that once were. Memory is a funny beast, she says. It can trigger desire or pain. And Christians often lean on redemption narratives, think Amazing Grace to make sense of past mistakes or sins.
Like wanting God to forget the bad parts.
She quotes Psalm 25, "Be mindful of your mercy. Do not remember the sins of my youth. According to your steadfast love, remember me." That deep human longing for God to see us through the lens of grace, not just our failures.
She talks about different kinds of time here.
Yeah, chronos, just
Yeah.
regular clock time, day to day. Versus kairos, those significant transformative moments when God's time, God's grace kind of breaks in and changes everything. Wesley's idea that grace is at work from the first dawning till it is consummated in glory.
Okay, let's unpack this more. How does history lead into fidelity? Chapter 8.
Be faithful. She shares another personal story here. Studying abroad, having this agreement with her boyfriend back home that they could kiss strangers.
Interesting agreement.
But then she formed this deep emotional connection with someone else and realized that felt like a much bigger faithlessness than just a kiss would have been. She admits she didn't quite understand how fidelity worked back then, thought it was just about technicality.
The technical virgin idea, but applied differently. Fidelity is more than just physical actions.
Much more. And that brings us to Jesus's really challenging words in Matthew 5 about looking at someone with lust being like committing adultery in your heart.
That raises the bar significantly. It's about intention, not just action.
Totally. So McCleneghan tries to parse the difference between desire and lust. Desire can be healthy appreciation, connection. She tells this funny, sweet story about seeing her husband catch a Nerf football as one of her hottest moments. That's desire connection.
Okay, so lust is.
Lust, drawing on Simon Blackburn, is more like a failure to value someone for who they are in the fullness of their humanity. It's reducing them, objectifying them in your mind.
Got it. And what about long-term relationships? Keeping desire alive.
She brings in Esther Perel here, who talks about that paradox. We need security and adventure or excitement in long-term love. Perel pushes back against the idea that commitment kills sex. Instead, commitment can actually create a space for deeper intimacy, wider than our imagining.
So commitment isn't a cage.
Not necessarily, and
Yeah.
Madeline L'Engle's idea fits here too. If our primary love relationship is really participatory, it actually gets nourished by our other healthy relationships. It's inclusive, not exclusive. We don't expect one person to be our everything.
Or if it takes work.
Absolutely. And McCleneghan stresses that spontaneity in sex or in intimacy is a myth. We have to be intentional to cultivate desire over the long haul.
Intentionality. That seems key. Which leads to the really tough stuff.
Yeah.
Staying or leaving, chapter 9.
Yeah, the avoidable and the inevitable, discerning between loving someone and actually being able to build a future with them. The pain of those on-again, off-again relationships.
Challenges those wedding vows, come what may.
It does. Relationships end, even with the best intentions. She questions Stanley Hauerwas's view that sex should only happen if there's a clear future. Bonhoeffer's idea of marriage as a divine structure helps, but it's not a magic fix, a panacea.
Are there clear reasons to leave? Deal breakers.
Her survey respondents mentioned things like active evictions, cruelty, racism, sexism, homophobia, that there has to be that all-in commitment from both people. She also brings in Gottman's research.
The love stuff.
Yeah, the masters versus disasters of relationships. Masters stay calm, kind even in conflict. Disasters are in fight or flight. Intimacy needs respect, risk-taking, responsibility, rights, regard, reciprocity, responses to the 7 R's. And those little bids for connection Gottman talks about.
How does God's abundance fit in?
She's the story of Jesus feeding the 5,000. Are we generous in our relationships, stingy with praise, or lousy at sharing? Luke 16.10. Whoever is faithful with little is also faithful with much. Small behaviors reveal character.
So it's about character, action, not just feelings or a fairy tale.
Exactly, challenging the Disneyfication of love. Real love, biblical love, is strong. 1 John 4.18. Perfect love casts out fear. Song of Songs 8.6. Love is strong as death.
And that quote about love being an act.
And Patchett. Love is not a feeling, it's an act. It takes work. Gottlieb's advice to settle might be pragmatic, but McCleneghan suggests real success needs both partners being all in, actively working. And sometimes leaving a harmful or non-reciprocal relationship is the necessary, faithful choice, even though it involves grief. But love itself endures. Song of Songs 8.7 again. Many waters cannot quench love, neither can floods drown it.
Wow. Okay, what a journey through this book. We've gone from pleasure and shame, through ethics, vulnerability, history, fidelity, all the way to staying and leaving.
It covers so much ground.
Yeah, and the core message seems to come back to love. God's nature is love. We have that Charles Wesley hymn, pure, universal love thou art. Thy nature and thy name is love. Love, sex, life, they're all tangled together, aren't they? The big commandment, love God, love neighbor, love yourself with everything you are.
All interconnected.
So as we wrap up, maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. Comes from an old song. You've got to give a little, take a little, and let your poor heart break a little. That's the glory of love. How can you maybe take some of these ideas about vulnerability, about ethics, about intentionality, and apply them in your own life, your own relationship, approaching intimacy with both wisdom and grace?
Yeah, and this really raises an important question for all of us. How can you practice seeing with new eyes in your relationships, in your life? Intentionally looking for the good, for the reign of God, maybe rediscovering that thing that attracted us to our partner in the first place. It's about engaging in that ongoing process, that wrestling, dancing, weaving in and out, that is learning to be in relationship with God, with yourself, with others, knowing, as the faith suggests, that ultimately death and sin have no victory for us.